Hello, I'm Iseult Bottoni from IDC EMEA, and I have with me today my colleague Eszter Morvay, Research Manager for the EMEA PC Tracker. On Monday we released our preliminary results for Q3 2011, and Eszter is going to share with us what that initial view of the market tells us about the performance in the third quarter. So, what did happen in the PC market, and were the results what you expected?
The EMEA PC market continued to decline by -3.8%, and that's pretty much in line with expectations. Now, the market has been on a downward trend since Q3 last year, and because of the continued weakness in consumer demand and increasing caution on the business side, we have expected the market to continue to be impacted.
Okay, and what were the key inhibitors for that in Western Europe?
Well, the decline has come primarily from Western Europe, and with regards to performance, it's primarily coming from the consumer market. With regards to consumer spending, there has been a slowdown, but also people are spending their money on different devices. So instead of PCs, we are seeing a very strong shift onto media tablets and smartphones in particular. And because of this slowness in consumer demand for PCs, the channel partners are also very cautious in taking new orders. And although the sell-out is actually still continues to be rather positive and accelerating, we do not yet see that reflected in the sell-in figures. And as a result of that, the consumer numbers have gone down in Western Europe by -20.6%.
Okay. Okay. And the commercial segment, is that suffering in the same way?
Not at all, actually. It's not performing massively well, but there has been actually a growth of 3.7%, which is actually slightly better than what we have anticipated. Again, we have thought that the markets would start slowing down, considering the overall economic turmoil in the Eurozone, the news of the credit downgrading in the US, but in the short term this didn't seem to have materialized. There hasn't been any major impact. Now, in terms of what's happening in the commercial space, there's a lot of difference in terms of the sector and the size of business. So we do still expect enterprise to have performed much better than SMB, which we think continued to struggle. And also in the public sector, there's a big difference between, let's say, education, which is actually quite a big quarter in Q3 with all the schools purchasing additional equipment, whereas government and public administration in particular continues to struggle from the continuous budget freeze.
Okay, and would you say that that's a trend across the region, or is it country specific? Is there something?
Yeah, there are actually quite a lot of differences. I mean, as one could expect, the markets of Italy and Spain continue to actually the worst. The decline there is really severe, over -20%, in some cases over -30%, and clearly there both the consumer and commercial markets are really badly hit by the escalating economic crisis and credit crunch. With regards to some of the consumer trends that we see is really across the board with regards to budget cannibalization. So whether it's Germany or UK or Sweden, there is actually quite a sharp drop still in consumer demand for PCs. On the commercial side, there are, of course, again, differences, and whereas France and Germany still actually had over 10% growth in commercial sales, the UK continues to lag behind, and again, that's really driven by the state of the economy and the overall sentiment of businesses.
Okay, and the emerging markets, so Central Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa, what's happening there?
Growth continued to be positive, so whilst Western Europe declined by -10.2%, CE has actually grown by +4.8%, and Middle East has grown by +7.4%. So the growth is still positive, but considering the strong double-digit increase that we've seen over many years, that has clearly slowed down. Now again, there are a lot of differences in terms of how the individual countries have performed. The Africa region actually is still a major growth driver. A lot of the channel development and channel expansion is driving that growth, and in fact the demand for consumer notebooks is a key driver. But for example, in Central and Eastern Europe, again, Russia or Ukraine have performed much better, whereas in Czech Republic or Poland or Bulgaria, which are also key markets within the CE region, are showing completely different trends based on weaker consumer sentiment.
Okay, and the vendors, what's happening there?
Well, there is again, the market overall has declined, so there is a lot of consolidation going on. There is no change in the top two spots, so HP maintained its leadership and in fact further consolidated its position. But HP is followed by Acer, and Acer has actually declined quite severely. Now, HP, again, they've benefited from very strong growth in CE and Middle East in particular, but in Western Europe they are actually suffering a bit more, again, primarily coming from this consumer weakness. But HP is really strong in the Western European commercial market and continue to dominate and really consolidate their market share there. On the other hand, Acer's huge decline is really got to do with the fact that they really stopped the channel quite severely starting from Q1 2010. So that problem has been sort of going on for the past 4 to 6 quarters, and many of the channel partners have become a lot more cautious in taking new orders until they can actually flush out that old inventory. Where we have a change is actually in the third position, because Asus this quarter has actually moved up to the third position. They really had a terrific quarter, and in fact they've taken the #1 position in the overall Western European consumer market. They are doing excellently, really across the board. They have very strong notebook shipments, and at the same time they also continue to focus very strongly on CE and EMEA. Then you've got Dell in 4th position. Again, Dell is maybe suffering a bit more. There is a very, again, stiff competition in the commercial side because renewals are rather scarce and cautious, so there's a fierce competition, particularly from HP, so that is impacting Dell. And on the consumer side, it's very difficult to again get new orders into the retail channel, whereas direct sales is not that important in the consumer market anymore. And then we've got actually Lenovo, which posted one of the strongest growth in Q3, partially because of the Medion acquisition. So Lenovo could benefit from some additional volume and momentum, particularly in Germany and a few other countries, but also Lenovo remains very aggressive with regards to customers acquisition in the SMB space, in the enterprise space, and very strong focus on the SEMA markets as well.
Okay, excellent. And one final question. Q4/11, what do you think is going to be the market situation there?
Well, it's maybe a bit early to say, but again, based on the fact that Q3 performed in line with expectations, we continue to assume that the market in Q4, particularly for consumers, could actually remain quite weak. Again, from a demand standpoint, we think that a lot of the consumer spending would be geared towards media tablets and smartphones, media tablets being sort of a hands-on Christmas present, and people would not necessarily be spending on computers. On the commercial side, it's actually a bigger question mark. A lot of companies, of course, could have end-of-year budgets, which they're going to be spending before a new potential budget freeze comes next year. But I think that the current economic environment and again problems in the Eurozone will increasingly translate into increased caution with regards to spending. So Q4 would have this two sort of dual effect, but we are not expecting any major uptake, but we're probably not going to see any major decline either. So more or less a flattish market. But this is mostly for Western Europe. I think Central Eastern Europe and Middle East, and particularly for consumer notebooks, could still remain one of the biggest growth opportunities and sort of strongest performing sectors within the PC market, at least in the short term.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. A lot to think about, and we'll have a look again in Q4. Thank you.